Grand Rising and welcome. This is actually a substitute for a show that was to air on AM 1490 WERE earlier today at 11 o'clock due to some unforeseen circumstances. And I'll just be frank with you. Several of the individuals involved in the show decided to take a break today, but I did not want to be disrespectful to the audience. Not that they're taking a break was disrespectful, but I am compelled to share information with you as it comes to me. So we're going to do this broadcast, and I am very pleased to have someone who is close to me. I see her as a daughter, but I also see her as a number of things, and amongst them, she is someone who has been able to triumph over some very trying circumstances, and we don't necessarily need to go into all that unless she chooses to, but I just will say this. There are a lot of things that are going on in this world that seem to be beyond our ability to control, but we have a greater amount of control than we are aware of. And what I would like to do in the process of doing this show is give you some tools to help you to navigate these difficult circumstances that we find ourselves in. So with that being said, I would like to welcome Imani Capri. Imani, as opposed to me giving the long version of the history of Imani Capri, I'm going to defer to you, give you that opportunity. So with that, I will say welcome to 360 Info Online Live, Imani Capri.
Good morning, Grand Rising. I literally kind of hopped out of bed to do this, but I'm excited to be here with you this morning. I am Imani Capri, an empowerment speaker, radio show host. I host two shows on 95.9 FM WOVU Cleveland, Conversations and Courage, and Truth Be Told. I'm a Reiki practitioner. And, really without all the titles, I'm someone who is really just on a mission to help people ignite their greatness, get in relationship with their greatness, and be able to give what is uniquely theirs to share with the world to make this a better place. And of course, I have a passion for elevating the voices of women and girls and issues that women and girls face being here on the planet. So that's who I am. Happy to be here with you this fine Saturday, cold morning in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Year after year, folks say they want a white Christmas. They want a white Christmas. Well, I think this year they got what they wanted because there's plenty of white out there. But, it's funny. I was reflecting on that song, I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about that yesterday and some of the implications of that song. And as I was receiving this download, I was realizing that song has some very racist implications.
I knew you were going to say that.
And we sing that song without really fully realizing what we're talking about when we sing those words. So I know that there's a certain sense of nostalgia with that, and I'm not going to denigrate folks who like the music that they like and like the songs that they like. But for me, it just has a different meaning. Before we started doing this broadcast, I asked you what you wanted to talk about. And, one of the things that you mentioned was basically reflections on the year 2020, because it has been indeed a very interesting year. And I think the tendency that many of us may have is to think of all the negative that we've had to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea of being on lockdown or being self-quarantined or whatever terminology you want to use to apply to that. When we talk about words, I think it's really important to understanding the meaning and the etymology of those words and to put them into a context. So being in a place of isolation, being by yourself, being with yourself, it can do a couple of things. It can either help you or harm you. Being in isolation can mean that because you're detached from other people and you're not getting the energy that you get from them on a continual basis, it may have a negative effect on you. But conversely, being in that place of isolation may allow you to go within yourself and facilitate a period of health, self-discovery. So it's really all a matter of your perspective and your attitude towards the circumstances that you're going through. We've been told that we have to be by ourselves to protect us from each other. In the midst of this, though, we managed to somehow stay connected through platforms like these and phone calls and all the other ways that we find to communicate with ourselves. So with all that being said, I want to give you an opportunity to reflect on this past year and what you see as what it was, what it should be, and what the following year can be.
I think this year has been a really powerful opportunity to, as you say, self-reflect and get real with ourselves about, are we happy? How we define our happiness, how we define our self-worth. A lot of people experience and still are experiencing loss this year, whether it's loss of a job, loss of loved ones, loss of a sense of normal and a sense of safety. And so, for me, I've definitely gone through my own challenges this year, but I've really had to reflect on, like, what is the source of my happiness? Is it a job? Is it a certain amount of money in the bank? Is it relationships with certain people? And all of those things have been challenged in one way or another. So for me, what I have had to discover, I think, more deeply this year is that my connection to the divine, the God of my understanding, my spiritual practice, is what really sustains me and sustains my life. There's an affirmation that I say, and I take it kind of like a vitamin. With vitamins, you have to take them over an extended period of time before you really see the effects of how they work. And I believe the same is true with affirmations and other things. So this affirmation goes, God is my infinite supply. I have the magic purse of the spirit. It can never be depleted. As money goes out, immediately money comes in. It is always crammed, jammed with abundance under grace and perfect ways. And this last year, I have really been a full-time entrepreneur, and I was kind of propelled into that journey much earlier than what I had expected, and under circumstances that I didn't necessarily direct. I thought it was going to happen a different type of way. And throughout that year, like many people who may listen or watch this on the replay, there were things that I felt insecure about. How am I going to pay my mortgage as a single, unmarried person and carrying all this on my own? How am I going to, take care of the things that are necessary for my lifestyle without a steady 9 to 5 type of income? And lo and behold, through doing that self-reflection, inner work, staying true to what I feel is my purpose here on the planet, a way has continued to be made out of what initially appeared to be no way. So I share that just to say that 2020 has definitely given me the opportunity to get real about where real power and happiness comes from. And it doesn't come from the external things in our man-made matrix that sometimes we put too much stock into. If your worth is dependent upon having a particular type of job, what happens if you no longer have that job? If your worth is dependent upon, where you may stand in relationship to certain people, well, what happens if those relationships end or someone in your life who you love is lost? So I think everybody has, in many ways, had to use 2020 as an opportunity to deeply reflect on our happiness, how we sustain ourselves, what really sustains us, what's really important. I think prior to COVID-19, we probably our priorities have shifted. And also realizing that we are all so much more intimately connected than we may have really understood and appreciated before. the fact that COVID-19 technically could have started with just a handful of individuals in the beginning and now is a global pandemic and so easily spread is evidence of the fact that we're all connected, and what we all do or don't do actually has an impact on one another. So I would say those have been some of the things that I've just been reflecting upon in 2020.
Okay. And I want to mention that we're not fully aware of the why of all of the things that we're going through now. We're not fully aware of what the why is about those things. And I think to a certain extent, there has been some intentionality about the design of the present construct. I think, and I'm sure that there will be people who disagree, and they're welcome to disagree, but I think there's some intentionality in keeping us apart from each other, just because of the fact that we're all electric beings. We all have a certain vibrational level. And when you bring people together into the same space and allow them to vibrate on that level, magical things happen, to use a term that you used earlier when you were reading your affirmation. So I think it's important for us to understand, as you stated, the interconnectivity of humans on this earth. Part of the purpose of humanity is that connection, is because we are dependent upon each other. There's a certain instance or a certain degree of interdependence that exists with us. So I think now more than ever, it is important for us to be connected and to utilize the energy that we're capable of. I'm recalling a show that we did last week, and we had Dr. James Brown on, and he was talking about how there were 100 Buddhist monks, and they got together in a specific place and they engaged in chanting, and there was a powerful result that came out of them engaging that. And the whole idea was, if you took a much larger number of folk and you had them engage in the same thing, think about the potential that it would have to create positive energy and positive vibrations that would impact all who are on the planet right now. So we cannot take for granted the power that we have as these electric beings. What I am learning and what I have learned is that everything on the planet moves. You see that rock? It has atoms in it, protons, electrons, and neutrons. There's activity that's going on in it. Even though it seems as though it's just sitting there, there's some actual movement in it. There's some actual energy in it. And, you know, those things are amplified by the things that we do. So I really appreciate the point that you have made about that. As I look back on this past year, I look at so many things that have happened that have been opportunities for growth. I, like you, went to Kent State University. I majored in telecommunications. I learned about radio and television broadcasting, and I've been privileged and blessed to have been able to be involved in broadcasting in a television studio with multiple cameras and a control room and all those things that facilitate the production of a broadcast. But here I am on December 26, 2020, sitting in front of a computer with a broadcast studio right in front of me, and a guest on that can provide adequate insight to inform and enlighten those who are watching. So I look at that as a blessing. Within the past year, I've taken on learning how to edit film. I've taken up learning how to do podcasts and to reach out to people all over the world. You know, last week we had people watching all the way from Kenya and Ghana, you know, East Africa and West Africa, watching something that's happening in Cleveland, Ohio. If you had told me 3 years ago that would be happening right now, it would have been hard for me to fathom. But, you know, that's reality. technology is providing a lot of opportunities for us to advance and to facilitate the things that will enable us to live within our purpose. So, that being said, you being a motivational speaker, it's very important that you understand the technology. So as I sit here and I see you on the screen, I see you got your microphone, I see that you've been making those same kinds of steps. You talked about becoming an entrepreneur, and I know personally that you were involved in an employment situation, and for whatever reason, you had to disconnect from that paradigm. But what you found is that in moving from a place where somebody was telling you what you had to do for 40 hours a week, now you're in a position to be in charge of your own destiny. And what you are finding is that the universe is meeting your needs because you are equipped and you are doing the work that will attract the things that are required for your sustenance. So many lessons in this year. Yesterday, we had a family call. My mother's 84 years old. And yesterday, for the first time, she was on Zoom. And for the first time, she sent a text message. She's received text messages, but she hasn't been able to respond because she didn't know how to perform that function. But someone within the family just basically gave her some instructions. They gave her a step-by-step. She followed those instructions. Voila. She's on Zoom. Voila. Now I can send her text messages and she can respond. So, again, we can look back on 2020 as being a year of tragedy and discomfort and all those things we want to characterize it. But all of these challenges happen to give us an ability to react and respond. And the key is to be in a peaceful place as you respond to these challenges, because your reaction is going to determine your future. I was reading and I read a few books while I was observing the winter solstice. And I was just reading how, when you have a challenge and you react to it on a negative basis, it can cause disease and dysfunction in your body because each one of your cells receive the energy that you provide to it. So if you're in a negative mental state, every cell in your body is a microcosm of you, the macrocosm.
It's very interesting. Yeah. I don't want to interrupt you, but yeah.
Well, no, go ahead. I'll receive your insight because I know you have something that you want to share. So please feel free.
There are a couple of points that you made that I want to connect on, but let's start with your most recent point of how the cells in our body respond to our thoughts, our thinking, our emotions. There's a quote from my Buddhist mentor, Daisaku Ikeda, in which he basically says, whatever you make up in your mind, your body starts to move. Every cell in your body will move in that direction. So if you make your mind up and decide that, oh, I can't do this, or, oh, 2020 has been a horrible year for me and things are just not working in my favor. Well, guess what? Every cell in your body is going to align with that energy. Conversely, if you make your mind up and say, you know what, despite whatever obstacles I am facing right now, I'm going to find out, how can this add value to my life? What opportunity is this obstacle presenting me? And I'm going to use this to build up my muscles and discover what my superpowers are and come out here and shine in the world no matter what happens. If you take that type of mindset, then every cell in your body aligns with that energy and starts to move in that direction. So I love what you just said, Vince, about what you were reading as you were observing winter solstice, about how our cells and body respond to our thoughts. And it's really a powerful thing, which takes me to the other thing that I wanted to emphasize. I am a Nichiren Buddhist who chants Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, like Tina Turner in the movie What's Love Got to Do with It? And the point that you made about the Buddhist monks getting together and chanting, and that having a very powerful effect and manifesting some positive, powerful things. I just want to say that there are millions of people all over the planet who are part of my lay Buddhist organization, the Soka Gakkai International USA, who are chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo every day for the happiness of every person on the planet and for peace, world peace around the world. There are millions of people in every country, almost every country on the globe, chanting this. So we are all connected. Whether you chant, whether you pray, whether you meditate without chanting, all of the energy that we're putting up into the universe is affecting each other. And believe it or not, this virus, I believe, is also a manifestation of the energy that we have been putting up. The real virus is, the toxic thoughts that we harbor, the toxic energy that we often spew towards one another. Toxic energy like racism, sexism, any other type of isms you can think of. All that energy has a collective manifestation too. So I think if we can kind of clean up how we view ourselves, how we relate to ourselves, how we see other people, then we will start to see things like pandemics shift. This is a manifestation of something that we all have the opportunity to learn and heal and change inside of our individual lives as well. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. But I think it's really important that we approach obstacles with the perspective that they are opportunities, divine opportunities to gain a gift, to gain some wisdom, to gain some clarity, to gain some knowledge or understanding about yourself that you may not have had before. And I can't emphasize that enough because we are in a time now where, suicide rates are increasing. The abuse of substances is increasing. Domestic violence and all forms of abuse are increasing as a direct result of this pandemic. So we have to encourage people to not give up, to not lose hope, and to understand that obstacles don't necessarily come to defeat us. They come to challenge us to grow. But we need the right perspective to be able to view those obstacles and tools to help us get through them. And first, starting with understanding that we're all in this together, I think is one way to start understanding that we can get through this if we encourage and support one another. We just celebrated Christmas here in the United States, and thinking about this holiday season, how we can help support those around us. What can we give to share with those who may be struggling or have it harder than we may have it, helping people feel connected.
I wanted to expound a little bit about what you mentioned in terms of the impact of the pandemic, because there's a common denominator involved in this. And the common denominator is fear. And fear is something that exists on the lower levels of our human existence. But this fear is also fueling the sickness that many people are experiencing right now. And it's kind of goes along with a few different things. One, the universe is mental. When we think about what we see, we always think about what's in front of our eyes. But there's the seen and the unseen. Now, you can't see fear unless you're seeing it in somebody's eyes or their response to something that they're facing. But fear it's an emotion. It's energy that's in motion, but you actually see the energy. I just wanted to make that point because we as beings on this planet are being purposely manipulated into a state of fear that defeats our ability to reach our higher aspects of ourselves, to empower ourselves to conquer those things that cause us to have fear. So again, just want to deal with that intentionality. Now, as a being, you have free will. You have the ability to make choices. So you can choose to be in that place of fear, or you can choose to not be in that place of fear. And I agree wholeheartedly with what you said about the purpose of challenges. You have to have challenges and obstacles in your life, because those things are the things that provide the resistance that can propel you into a growth paradigm. It's impossible to go through this life without ever having something that's going to challenge you. But that challenge is an opportunity, for one, for you to exercise your ability to be at peace, and two, it offers you an opportunity to grow and to change. So many of us are affected by things that we do routinely. We have these habits, and I'll just use diet as an example of this. I was in a conversation with someone that was saying that they were having pain in their body, and they were having consistent pain on their body. And the same person said that they were drinking 2 or 3 liters of pop a day. Now, if you understand the physiology of that, the sugar in that soda that they're drinking has an impact on the immune system that basically destabilizes the immune system, and it also serves as fuel for inflammation. So anytime you have inflammation in your body, it's because you have something that's feeding that inflammation, or it could just be some dysfunction in a particular organ that is the seat of an emotion that has an impact on your body in that way. So we get into these habits. So we drink that pop every day, and then we have the pain in our knee every day. Well, that will continue to happen unless there's some type of change. So the challenge is that you have pain in your body. And then the question becomes, well, what do you do about it? Do you change, or you keep doing the same thing? Well, you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, but expecting a different result. So the whole key to it is recognizing that change is required and then doing the work. And the work, it involves discipline. Mm-hmm. So you have to say, okay, well, no, maybe this might not be the thing for me to drink. If I drink water instead, what will the water do? Well, the water will remove the toxins from your body, and amongst those toxins are the things that are causing you to have pain. It requires that you do something. So you meet the challenge of initiating the change that will result in you lessening the degree of pain that you're having. I heard you gasp. I know you want to jump in, so please feel free.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, you know, for most people, let's keep it real. We can experience all kind of side effects of our choices in our lives, but it takes a whole lot of courage and sometimes know-how that we don't feel we have in order to really execute and make change real so we get a different result. And so for that, I would say, you know, don't be afraid to invest in yourself. That's another thing that 2020 has taught me. And it's taught quite a few people that whenever you invest in yourself, you will always get a return on your investment. So whether that's learning a new skill, you know, I know several people inside my own family decided to get certifications this year or finish that degree. You know, shout out to my mom who got her certification to be a yoga instructor, and she has been teaching classes now. She and I also were certified in Kemetic Reiki. You know, I got certified in Usui Reiki earlier this year. So now I'm certified as a Usui and Kemetic Reiki practitioner. Investing in yourself will always have a return on your investment. Investing in change for your own life will always yield a return on that investment. But the first step, I think, is being able to get real with yourself and do an assessment of a current state assessment of where you are, and are you above your head in being able to lead and guide yourself through that change. And if the answer is yes, then you should get a coach. You should get a mentor. You should invest the dollars or the time and the energy in having someone who can help guide you through those steps in a way that are measurable, that don't seem overwhelming, that are clear. Sometimes when we feel like we have the weight of having to figure out how am I going to get myself from A to B, that becomes like an overwhelming process for a lot of people. So I want to encourage you to invest in yourself. If there are changes that you want to make in your life, but you're not sure where to start, how to start, or you feel overwhelmed, that would be the time to invest in some therapy, or potentially a life coach, or a course, or a book. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't necessarily think that you should shoulder all those changes on your own. The other thing that I want to say about some of the obstacles that we face, Nichiren Buddhism has a teaching or saying that we choose the appropriate karma. And by that, meaning we have the perfect set of life circumstances that are divinely designed to help us bring out our superpower, right? So, going back to the analogy that you used of that pain in the knee, maybe that person having that pain in the knee and that happening over an extended period of time, and they get tired of it, and it motivates them to start changing their diet. And then they discover they have a passion for health and wellness, and then they eventually move from drinking soda every day to now being a health and wellness coach. Well, guess what? The pain in the knee and drinking the soda all that time helped propel them into creating change that help them discover their power and their purpose on the planet. We all have circumstances inside of our lives that if we can slow down and kind of take an inventory and maybe invest in getting some help on understanding our lives and ourselves, or how to navigate our unique circumstances or challenges, we start to discover these jewels. Right in the midst of your pain may be the jewels of your purpose and the real foundation of your power. And all we have to do is kind of get quiet, start taking inventory, and maybe have some guidance, on that journey or in that process. But everything serves a purpose. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Everything serves a purpose. That oftentimes our purpose and our power can be found in the very pain and circumstances about which we complain or don't understand. But that would be the time to invest in some resources to help you navigate that, and that we don't need to always feel like we have to take everything on by ourselves or alone, because we're not in this alone.
I wanted to jump in real quick and just make a couple of points. One, you mentioned the need for folks to consider having some type of therapy, and the reality for us as citizens of this country is that we have epigenetically been carrying a certain amount of trauma through our entire existence, because our entry into this country was a traumatic entry.
Now you got to explain for some of those people what I know what epigenetics means, but go on, Brother Vince, and break that down for some people. Like, what is that?
Well, I'm gonna do it in a layman's way, because I'm not a genetic scientist and I'm not really equipped to speak that language. But what I will say is that it's something, as you mentioned, that's in your DNA, because your DNA is something that is carried from generation to generation. When people come together and they have babies, they create a being that is as of a genetic nature, based on what one body set of genes has and what the other body set of genes has. But the point is that we all have these genes in us, and all of these genes have that trauma in them. And it's just laying there. And if you don't do anything about it, then you will continue to suffer from the effects of that trauma. You, as being someone who has survived some very traumatic circumstances in your life, you're the evidence of our ability to recover. And it's not that you necessarily completely recover, because you always deal with that trauma on some way or another, some fashion or another. But the whole idea is to have a transformation as a result of a therapeutic process that you go through.
And I think it's important to just piggyback on what you said with the epigenetics part. Not only do we literally embody kind of like the memories and trauma of our ancestors, but conversely, we also embody their power, their strength, their wisdom, the things that made them resilient. And so sometimes the things that literally made them kings and queens and, you know, uh, divine beings of light and manifestation, right? All these new age terms we use quite frequently now. We embody all of that. And I think sometimes when we talk about epigenetics, there's so much emphasis on the traumatic side of it. But I just want to encourage people that we also embody all the power of our ancestors as well, all of their wisdom and resilience. And so sometimes you just need to go through that refining process, that alchemy, right? To be able to transform trauma into what can later be your triumphs. And that's why it's important to have coaches or to invest in yourself, because we can't, I didn't do any of my transformation on my own. I had lots of help. And so I just want to reinforce that for people, Vince, that as we go into a new year and talk about a new starting new chapters, you can't have a new year unless there's a new you. And in order to create a new you, like there has to be kind of like an alchemical process that happens.
Okay. Well, where I was going was to support something that you said earlier, and that is that traumatic event can be a catalyst for a change to occur. Again, it's all in how you respond to that particular challenge. And I also want to amplify what you said about our successes being a part of our epigenetic reality, because we have been creators. I mean, when you look around, when you come up to an intersection and you see that light, and that light is stopping someone from running through the intersection and could possibly, collide with you, well, you can thank a brother from Cleveland that it's there. I mean, we have been creative in spite of our circumstances. And, that brings up another point, and that is the importance of narrative. We've talked about how in a kind of a remote way, how mass media has disaffected us, because we keep receiving this negative information that puts us in a place of fear. Part of it is our responsibility to take control of a narrative, particularly when it's a narrative that doesn't serve us. So when we can continue to put out information that contradicts the narrative that is being used to control and manipulate us, we can see progress. We can elevate ourselves to a higher level of consciousness that enables us to be self-sufficient. We talked earlier, and I think you mentioned in your opening remarks about us being able to serve each other. And the fact of the matter is, each of us, we just talked about Garrett Morgan, but each of us comes into the world with a purpose for being. Each of us comes into the world with a certain set of gifts and talents and skills. And all of those things exist for us to benefit others. And that goes back to that interdependence that we talked about, So when we get in touch with the reasons that we are here and what our purpose in life is, it empowers us to be those vessels of service. See, but what we have in place right now is an educational system that is kind of based on the idea of opportunity. So, children are going through this educational process and trying to figure out what they want to do. And sometimes what they want to do is contingent upon how much money they can get paid, because getting paid money allows them to get things and to have materials and to have a big house and to have a $500,000 Maybach and all these other kinds of things, when in fact, it's really kind of a disingenuous way of cultivating humanity. If we're not receiving instruction and enlightenment about who we are, what we are, how we work, how we connect with each other, then our educational system is not really serving our needs. If you go through 13 years of education, but you don't know how to put a seed into the ground and cultivate a plant that will enable you to eat, then something is missing. If you go through 13 years of education and you don't know the difference between a spleen and a gallbladder or a kidney and a liver, something is missing because you've gone through this whole process, but you didn't learn enough about yourself to know yourself. That's why that whole idea of knowing yourself is so important. We experience a pain in the body, and the first thing we do is go to the go to the emergency room, or we go to a doctor, and we expect that doctor to know us, but that doctor doesn't really know us. What the doctor does is he hears you talk about what the symptoms are. He hears you talk about where the pain is coming from, and then he opens up his book, or he goes to the reference material in his brain, and he says, well, if this, then that. And then he'll say, here, take this. And then you take the pill. You haven't even dealt with what caused you to have the pain. All you're thinking is, I don't want to have this pain anymore. But so you don't really fully resolve that issue, and nor do you find out about who you are, and your self-knowledge serves for you to be your own physician. So we have to begin to educate ourselves, as opposed to depending on something outside of ourselves to give us the education that we need to live within our purpose. And living in our purpose, we can find the true happiness. You know, another issue is that we look for happiness in things outside of ourselves. But the only way that you can really be happy is to be in a state of peace. And you go between pleasure and joy. The pleasure and the joy. Those things enable you to have peace. And within your peace, within what's inside of you, that part of you that nobody sees, that's where your real happiness is. So when things are bringing you challenges, and you look at those challenges and you see what they are, and then you react to them from a peaceful place, they're not going to cause you to have all those negative things that happen in your body as a result of your reaction to it. I know folks who have basically had to change their circumstances because the circumstances were not conducive to them being in a peaceful state. And when they remove themselves from that particular situation that was creating the stress, that was just seemingly unmanageable, there was a complete paradigm shift in that reality. Some of us make choices to keep ourselves in those stressful situations because we don't know enough about ourselves to move forward. And it's fear that keeps us from changing that situation, because again, we're operating from a place that's not based on knowledge of ourselves. So all of this is being said to say that it's very important for us to know ourselves. Now, I also wanted to backtrack and clear up something, because I think that there are people who might be watching, or there may have been people who tuned in and heard you mention Buddhism. And because we have things that we see as religions that may not necessarily be a religion, but maybe it's just a way of existing and a way of being able to conquer those challenges that we meet, as you've expressed. I want you to take a few moments and just talk about Buddhism as it is, and not necessarily viewing it as a religion, because some folks may see it as a conflict with Christianity. And in truth, it's not a conflict with Christianity. You can be Christian and Buddhist at the same time. So could you address that?
Yeah, so Buddhism is recognized as a major world religion. You know, like Christianity, there are different sects, and that's SECTS, version of sections.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like how Christianity has different denominations, Buddhism has what's called different sects or sections. The form of Buddhism that I practice is based on the Lotus Sutra, which is the very last teaching of the historical Buddha, also known as Shakyamuni or Siddhartha Gautama, the one who was the founder or creator of Buddhism, that was born as a wealthy prince in India and then ventured beyond the gates and saw so much suffering and things he wasn't exposed to. So yeah, Nichiren Buddhism as a whole is recognized as a major world religion. However, it does not necessarily exist in conflict with any other of the religions. It's more based upon working your life from the inside out. And I think what appealed to me about Nichiren Buddhism is I was introduced to it at a time when I felt very powerless. I had a very strong like victim mindset, and justifiably so, because I had gone through almost a decade of childhood sexual abuse and was trying to recover as an adult from that. So I always believed in God, but I was seeking more. I wanted to have a practical way, like all of the things that you and I are talking about today. For some people who are already in the midst of doing deep spiritual work and reflection and have a strong spiritual practice, whatever that may be, it's like speaking to the choir. But for the person who is doesn't know who they are, doesn't know their purpose, who's trying to find their way, I'm sure they're thinking like, all this sounds really good, but how do I get started on a practical level? Buddhism for me gave me a very practical means to work on changing my mindset to something practical to do day in and day out that would help me understand how my life is created from the inside out, how it is that if I'm not in a healthy state mentally or emotionally, how that manifests in 3D real time in my environment in the form of circumstances or situations or relations that don't feel good or that kind of just perpetuate wherever it is I am emotionally or within my own thoughts, right? So, Buddhism, I think more properly defined is really a philosophy of life that gives you some practical means on how to carry out that philosophy. But it all starts with each of us taking responsibility for our own happiness. As you said, realizing that happiness is something that really is created from the inside out. It's not something that can truly be established from the outside in. It's not something that somebody else can give you. In Nichiren Buddhism, there are two forms of happiness that we talk about: absolute happiness and relative happiness. Relative happiness is the type of happiness that comes from, all the things outside of you somehow having an influence over whether or not you're happy. So how much money you have in the bank, do you have, that relationship with that man or woman that you always wanted, or, you know, type of house you may have, or the type of job you may have. Well, with relative happiness, whenever that external factor changes or shifts, there goes your happiness, right? If the job is no longer there, then there goes your happiness. If that perfect man or woman is no longer perfect or there, then there goes your happiness. Absolute happiness, on the other hand, is a type of happiness that we build from the inside out, with learning that, who we are, what really excites us, what is our purpose, what do we enjoy doing that we would love to do whether or not we were paid for it, and add value to the world, what makes us tick, and then working on those things that make us feel good about ourselves. And having a consistent spiritual practice, whatever that may be for you, definitely helps build up that inner strength and help us bring out our inner courage and wisdom. Those things are like real absolute happiness. And absolute happiness is something that is established no matter what's happening on the outside of you, no matter whether it's COVID or some other thing, or Donald Trump and the chaos that's happening in the environment. If you have absolute happiness, you still have a way to be centered and grounded and happy inside yourself. So Buddhism for me was a practical life philosophy that helped me understand that my life and my happiness is totally within my power, and it will be created from the type of work that I do on myself to heal, and not expecting other people to make me happy, but really figuring out like how I can do that for myself. And then understanding Buddhism also teaches that that process is not separate or disconnected from the greater universe, that it's all one. Like we ourselves are like mini versions of the greater cosmos, that the God of my understanding that causes the sun to rise and the rain to fall and the moon to shine, that exists inside of me too. And so if I understand how to tap into it and can live my life in rhythm with it, then what happens, it's like taking a plug, right? You know how we plug something into the wall to get electricity? Nichiren Buddhism for me taught me how to take my plug and put it into the universal outlet. And then once you're plugged in and you're in rhythm with that greater creator, um, miraculous things happen and your life can become every day a miracle. In fact, miracles happen every day. I just think we get distracted and desensitized from the wonder and miracle that life is. You know, the fact that we can do this broadcast, as you were saying, Vince, from our homes is a miracle. Um, the fact that we can experience snow and then at another time we can experience sunshine or rain, like these are miracles, but sometimes they can be taken for granted. So to answer your initial question, you know, Buddhism is really a life philosophy that gives you something that you can practice, you know, every day. Practical means and ways and steps that you can begin working on creating your own inner happiness and plugging your plug into the greater universe, and then seeing, you know, the transformation that can happen. I know I went kind of around the world with that, but
That's
I
okay.
hope I answered your question.
Sometimes you have to walk around the tree to understand the tree. And I'm going to share this. It's kind of funny, really. Last night, I needed to record a radio show, and I have a plug that I use to plug my phone into my recorder. And I could not find that plug. I just looked all over the place for it. And you know what I did?
What?
I said, Nam Yoho Renge Kyo.
And you found it.
Now understand, I don't really look at myself as a practicing Buddhist, but I will admit to you that there have been times in my life when those words came to me and I expressed those words and something magical happened. So I don't think that you can really underestimate the power of words, one, and the power of our connection to the universe. I think it all works hand in hand. And the truth of the matter is, we have all these different religions, and they all really go to the same place. So, you know, it's not a matter of you're wrong because you're this, you're wrong because you're that. You know, those are the kinds of things that divide us. But as a whole, as a race of people on this earth, we're all one.
Yes.
And we have to recognize the unity in being one as opposed to always being fractionated. You know, the election, which doesn't appear to have been resolved, because while the mass media is giving us the fact that on January 20th, Joseph Biden is going to be inaugurated as the president of the United States, you're still receiving emails and videos and all these other things from people who are saying, well, you know, they've got this way that they can create fraud by fractionating the votes, the vote counts. I saw something yesterday that was trying to indicate that somehow a miracle is going to happen, and Donald Trump is not. And I haven't said his name for I don't know how long. It just kind of escaped from my mouth. But they're saying that, you know, when January 20th comes, he's going to have to be dragged out, or that there's going to be something that happens that will be a legal reason for him not to leave office, you know. And the whole notion of that is something that really incites a certain level of anxiety or fear in us, you know, because we want to think that things have been resolved, but then the divisions that we're having between ourselves don't allow us to resolve those things. So I guess I said all that to say the importance of us understanding that we are all one. And I think, you know, basically, most people want the same things out of life. They want to be happy. They want to have the things that they need in order to live successfully. We all want those things. But when you look at what has happened in the past year, you've seen a record number of businesses closing. You've seen records of numbers of people becoming unemployed and not being able to do for themselves. And so it's creating a greater amount of dependence on a government that historically has given other things priority. We spend over 50% of the US budget on military, more than 50%. It's probably 60% or even more. You know, when we talk about these stimulus packages, and I always use this analogy of going back to the year 2008, when there was a stimulus that happened then. And the stimulus was intended to benefit the people, but the stimulus really benefited the banks, the middleman. So you had all these people who didn't have the money to pay their mortgages. And I don't know why. Maybe it's just a result of my absurd thinking sometimes. But I just thought about it. I was like, well, if you gave the money to the people and the people paid their mortgages, then the banks would receive the money. So when you talk about stimulus, well, yeah, you're stimulating you're stimulating payment to the banks by giving the money to the people to give to the banks so that they can keep their homes. But instead of giving the money directly to the people, they gave the money to the banks, and then the people couldn't pay their mortgages, and then they lost their houses, and then the banks assumed ownership of the houses that they were living in, because technically, since they were paying a mortgage, they didn't really own the house in the first place. But it seemed to me that the appropriate thing to do, if you're truly serving the needs of the people, would have been give the people the money and let them pay their bills so that they can maintain their present status. Now we're moving towards a place, they're projecting that a large number of people in this country will be dependent upon stimulus checks. Now they gave us $1,200, and some people can't pay their mortgage with $1,200. So $1,200 is really a drop in the bucket. Then now they're saying, well, you know, we might get $600. Well, $600 is half of that. So if you couldn't pay the mortgage, you know, now you can't pay the utilities or really anything else. I mean, some homes, some houses, $600 is their food budget. But if you don't have a house to live in, why does it matter? You know, but you know, the whole idea is that we just have to move towards a place where we can create opportunities for ourselves. So now that all these jobs are gone, folks are going to have to learn what you learned about how do I continue to exist when I don't have someone who is taking care of me by giving me a paycheck every 2 weeks or every week or whatever. We all have skills and abilities that will enable us to take care of ourselves. And this is the opportunity to find those things that we can do to take care of ourselves and to take care of others. I'm really, I don't know, I look at it in a very positive way when I see what's going on in Cleveland, despite some of the problematic issues that are involved. But I see people in our community who are stepping up. I see people in our community who recognize that there are needs that need to be met, and they are doing what they can do to facilitate meeting those needs. And these are things that are happening outside of, you know, governmental involvement. You know, sometimes we might be able to take advantage of someone's philanthropy. Someone just has an extra $100,000 and they're willing to donate it to a fund that someone writes a grant for, and they obtain the funds, and then they go out and they do what they need to do. So I don't want to be fatalistic or, you know, speak in terms of Armageddon or anything like that, but I do know that we are living in challenging times, and these challenging times require us to react in a rational level, and a logical level, and a spiritually inspired level in order to deal with the things that are happening to us. But if we keep ourselves responding and reacting to things and using fear as the engine that we're running on, then our vehicle is not going to get any farther, or it's not going to get very far. And I invite you to respond.
Yeah, I think there's a distinction also to be made between responding versus reacting. What we want to do is respond, not react. Reaction often comes without thought. It's something that's just like, the you go to the doctor and they tap your knee to test your reflex, on your knee, and then your knee automatically just kind of kicks out. Reactions are kind of like that, and they don't always come from a place that's grounded in, okay, I've reflected on this. What is the best, way to handle this situation, or what is the best energy that I can bring to this circumstance? So I think us just being intentional and self-aware of being able to respond versus react is one thing to consider. And then I love what you said about being spiritually connected and the importance of that, or spiritually inspired. There is a quote that I pulled while we were sitting here from my deck of Reiki healing cards, and it is talking about how we achieve greater fulfillment. And I just want to share this quote on this card. It says, when we're spiritually connected, we can experience improved relationships, enhanced creativity, a sense of purpose and direction, a deep inner peace, and a real enjoyment of our lives. Being spiritually switched on gives us greater happiness and fulfillment. So I think my message in today's broadcast would really be, as we close out 2020 and we are approaching a new year, and hopefully saying goodbye to Donald Trump and the Trump administration and all these different things, please do not become distracted out of making sure that you are spiritually grounded and connected and doing the work inside your own life to become absolutely happy, no matter what is happening outside of you. I think we easily underestimate the power and the importance of each of us working on our own happiness, and how that has a direct effect to the collective whole that we see happening out in the world, right? So each of us taking responsibility for our own happiness and being able to find ways to add value to the world, really getting clear about who we are and what our purpose is and how we can serve. Just us having the courage to do that work and make those changes affects the bigger picture. And if you take that and balloon it and multiply it times how many ever people are on the planet, or even just a critical mass number of people all doing that work, then things change, things shift. So, and that's something that we have control over. We don't have direct control over, is Donald Trump going to sign this piece of legislation or not? I mean, we can influence it by calling our elected representatives, right? But what we have everyday control over in the here and now is what we're creating our own happiness on. Are we spiritually connected to some sort of practice that helps us develop our strength, that helps us transform or transmute fear into courage and action and wisdom? Those are things that we have control over in the here and now. And, being able to make the choice to invest in coaches and courses and content like this show that feeds us and builds us up versus content that beats us down. I think that's really important. What we consume energetically is just as important as what we may be consuming in terms of food. What we consume for our mind and our energy body is incredibly important. So that's what I would share, Mr. Robinson.
Okay. Well, I want to give you a chance to talk about the radio shows that you're doing and let everyone know when they're on and how they can connect with you.
Thank you. So, yes, I host 2 radio shows on 95.9 FM if you're here in the local Northeast Ohio area. Although you can listen anywhere in the world by going to wovu.org online or downloading the WOVU app. On Tuesdays, you can hear me as the host of Conversations in Courage with Imani Capri, or as I say, with the girl, Imani Capri. That airs at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesdays. You can check out Conversations in Courage. That's the show where I interview people who are doing positive things with a courageous and powerful spirit all over the world. We have some dope guests coming up these next few weeks. The other show that I host is called Truth Be Told. That airs on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, also on WOVU. You can go to WOVU.org or download the WOVU app to listen anywhere in the world. That show is the only FM radio show that I know of in this area that is committed to shifting the culture and conversation around sexual assault, abuse, domestic violence, human trafficking, rape, and all related issues to a culture and conversation of education, healing, transformation, and inspiration. So you can hear those two shows, WOVU.org, the WOVU app, Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for Conversations and Courage, Thursdays at 7 p.m. for Truth Be Told, and that's also Eastern Standard Time. And follow me on social media, please. Instagram, I am _ Imani Capri. On Facebook, Imani Capri or the Imani Capri page.
Okay, so Thursdays at 7.
It's Truth Be Told.
Okay. And Conversations with Courage.
Conversations in Courage.
Oh, and Courage. I'm sorry. I mistyped it, but I think
That's
people will be able to find it. I'm just trying to show you some love here.
Thank you for the love. I appreciate it. Let me give the love back. Yeah, Conversations and Courage is Tuesdays at 11 a.m.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
All right. And so I got to plug my show. I've got a show that airs on WOVU as well. And that airs on Mondays at 11. So we got those 11s going. So
alignment, baby, alignment.
There you go. All part of the plan. But Thursday mornings at 11, you can listen to Open Door. I started calling it Open Door Cleveland, but I had to take the Cleveland part off of it because I'm having conversations with people outside of Cleveland. I did a show a couple weeks ago with my friend, comedian AJ Jamal, who, by the way, is going to be here in Cleveland, I believe, on the 2nd of January. He's going to be doing a couple of comedy shows at the Front Stage. So you can go to Front Stage if they have a website. You can always monitor Facebook. I'm sure somebody's going to post something, and I'll probably post a flyer for that performance as it has been shared with me. So that, and then of course, 360 Info Network, which airs Saturday mornings at 11 on 1490 AM WERE. And as Imani said, you can listen to Open Door by going to WOVU.org. And as she always reminds you, you can always download the WOVU app from your favorite app store. With WERE, you can tune in by going to www.newstalkcleveland.com, or you can listen to us on your AM radio by finding the frequency 1490. Imani Capri, it has been a joy to have this conversation with you. I appreciate the fact that you share wisdom and knowledge. I see you as someone who exceeds the number of your years. I see you as someone who allows the wisdom of the ancients and the ancestors to flow through you to provide the benefits that happen when people are receptive and ready, because not everybody is ready to hear some of the things that we're talking about. Some of us would rather watch a sporting event on television or watch a shoot 'em up, bang, bang, slice 'em up movie or something like that. And, we talked about diet. When you talk about diet, it's not just what you eat, it's also what you take into your mental space. It's the things that circulate in your head when you close your eyes, and those things they're ruminating in your brain, and they're having, effects, so you really have to be cautious about what you expose yourself to, and do everything you can to have the right attitude, because your attitude determines the outcome. You can have a negative attitude or you can have a positive attitude. It's all in the way you see things. Two people could be involved in a traumatic event, like a car accident or something, and one of them look at it and just and just wallow in pity and depression. And they have found that people who have that attitude after they have that experience, they don't live much longer. They have a shorter life. Conversely, the person who looks at that and sees it as an opportunity to create improvements in their life, their lives are extended. And it's all in what we talked about at the very first part of our conversation, and that is that cellular level and how our mentality affects us on all levels within ourselves. So with that, I don't want to prolong this conversation. We've been on for over an hour and it's just flown by as it usually does. But again, I appreciate you. I love you. And I thank you for being here with us today. And I hope that those who took the time to view and watch this program today have received something that will be of benefit to them. We've had a steady audience as we've been engaged in this conversation. And then I think that is an affirmation of the fact that we're doing something of value. So once again, thank you. Now I'm going to see my mama.
Thank you. I hope everybody has a wonderful new year. Vince, I love you too. Thank you for the great value that you add to the world through your platforms. I just want to remind people in closing, we are so much more powerful than we know and understand. And everybody doesn't have to be ready, but it's important that we keep planting seeds because eventually, under the right circumstances and conditions, seeds grow. So
Right.
I hope everybody has a great new year. Thank you.
Okay. And I will conclude as I usually do. Know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, and make today your very best day. Peace.